Now, unlike conventional programs, Sequetron is not designed to be driven from the computer. You'll see there are no transport controls like play, record, rewind. Instead, everything is controlled live from your MIDI keyboard. So to do this, it uses a dynamic key mapping system and a series of MIDI notes called command sequences. Now, this is much more powerful than programs which use fixed one-to-one key mapping, and it makes full control from any input device a practical reality. So to explain how all this works, this video takes a detailed look at the key mapper tool. It's normally used for customizing key maps, as you'd expect, but it also gives an insight into the underlying logic at the core of Sequetron. By the way, if you're thinking the on-screen virtual keyboard contradicts the previous point, it's only intended for convenience or test purposes. For serious use, it's far too cumbersome and misses the whole point of command sequences. Now, this demo uses the full version 12.06, but you can follow along with the LE version if you like, although some options may not be available. So first of all, make sure novice mode is off. The title bar indicates whether novice mode is on or not. If it's running, click stop, acknowledge the prompts, click config and untick novice mode, and then click run. Now we'll start the key mapper. You can either click settings key maps or tools key mapper. They're both the same. Now at first this screen can be quite daunting, but it's basically a scrollable table with columns for each of the 128 MIDI keys. You can see which is which as the header lights up when you press a key. Each row is a state or mode, and this light on the left shows that we've started up in live mode. Now the colours in the table follow the convention used with the virtual keyboard and printable template labels. There's green for time-related functions, yellow for pitch, red for recording, etc. And if you find them too distracting, you can turn them off with this button. So let's start by getting rid of all these factory settings and starting from scratch. Don't worry about doing any damage. No changes are permanent unless you click Config Save. Now a quick way of clearing each mode is to use these pre-fill buttons on the left. Now as you hover the mouse over any control on Sequetron, the status line gives a short summary of what the function does. So as you can see here, this pre-fill button pre-fills the whole mode with the ignore function. These buttons marked P pre-fill the mode with the play function. The pre-fill buttons map the same function to a range of keys starting from the current key to the start or end of the keyboard. The current key is defined to be the last column you clicked, and at startup this is the lowest possible key, or C-2, and you can see this indentation shows this is the current key. And the direction of pre-fill is shown by these arrows at the top. If we click this key here, this becomes the current key, and the direction shows that this key up to the top of the keyboard will be pre-filled. If we click the arrow, the direction reverses and all keys down to the bottom of the keyboard are pre-filled. Let's clear out live mode by clicking the pre-fill button here. Now the safety warning prompt reminds you which keys will be pre-filled before you commit. But once you get more confident, you can turn these warnings off with this button. Now anytime you can reset to factory settings. You can either click the global reset button for all modes, which is the same as the main config reset all settings menu option, or you can reset individual modes by clicking these reset buttons down here. So to reset live mode again, press R and they're back to the factory settings. So let's clear all modes now. Right, each key is now mapped to the ignore function, so it appears blank. If we press some keys now, although they light up, there's no sound. So to map a key, just click its entry in the required mode and select from the drop-down list. The first entry is always the ignore function, and if we map the play function, we can play that key. Map some more. So now we've got C, D and E, but nothing else. Now each mode has its own list of functions. There's command mode, record mode, and so on. And these are all described in the command reference document. Now back to live mode, let's map some more play keys. Now as play is a very common function, the play prefill button can be used. So you notice the last key I clicked then was this one, C#1. So it's been highlighted, and the prefill direction shows me it's going from this key up to the top of the keyboard. I press P, that fills in that function. If I reverse the arrow, press P again, and all those keys down to the bottom are filled in. Now you can map functions in any mode at any time. For example, we can pick hold for the time signature mode. But there's no point doing this at the moment, as we're stuck in live mode and we've got no way of reaching these other modes. Now this basic state isn't quite as useless as it seems, as all MIDI data is still being modified by the live output settings. For example, the channel number will override any data from your keyboard. So you could just use this as a simple MIDI channel converter, or more usefully, as a sound fattener with the channel multiplier. If we click Settings, Channel Multiplier, now at the moment our sound is something like this. But if we switch it on, set a channel range, say 9 channels, and set some pitch offsets, our simple basic keyboard becomes something like this. Now you can save all changes, including the key maps, to a named config file by clicking Config, Save, All Settings. You can then fill in a config file name of your choice. You can then load that file later by saying Load All Settings. Now the option is grayed out at the moment because you can only do this when the Sequetron is in config mode. Now if you just want to save the key maps to a named config file, you can click Config, Save, Key Maps Only. And again you're prompted for a file name. You can load these back by doing Config, Load, Key Maps Only. Now the LE users don't have this luxury, but they can still achieve the same thing by using Save and Load All Settings. So what other functions can we have in live mode? Well, there's a set of hotkey functions which are all indented to keep them separate from normal Sequetron functions. Now these are keyboard shortcuts such as F1 to F12. There's other combinations with Shift and Control, and these are sent to other Windows programs when the MIDI key is pressed. So you can control slideshows, videos, or answer emails direct from your music keyboard. So we'll map a left function and a right function to these two keys. Now here's an example using these two keys to step an image viewer through a series of slides. Right, the last function in live mode is the command function, which, as you may have guessed, enters command mode.